In a small American town, where racial tensions remain palpable despite the efforts of certain communities to build bridges, an unexpected event full of symbolism shakes the daily lives of the inhabitants. John Carter, a black man in his 40s, with an imposing stature and natural charisma, enters the city incognito. He is not a stranger, however, a native of this region marked by a complex and painful history. He returns to his land after spending years building an exemplary career. His reputation, forged by his unparalleled intelligence, his unwavering integrity, and his talent for defusing the most explosive situations, allowed him to climb the ranks to become chief of police. John accepted this position not without thought. He knows that the challenges awaiting him here will be numerous and sometimes thankless. The small town, with its streets lined with wooden houses and its picturesque city center, hides a deep division between its inhabitants. Distrust between communities persists, fueled by recent incidents that have rekindled old wounds. Despite this, John comes with a clear vision to establish a climate of mutual respect, restore trust in local institutions, and prove that change is possible, even in the most recalcitrant places. His first day begins discreetly, without uniform or official procession. Dressed in jeans and a simple shirt, John Carter chooses to walk through a working-class neighborhood to observe the local dynamics and feel the atmosphere of the community he has come to serve. This neighborhood, marked by economic and social tensions, is known to be a point of friction between residents and the police. The curious and sometimes suspicious glances of passers-by glide over him without suspicion, his imposing build and calm demeanor making him pass for an ordinary resident. As he stops to buy a bottle of water at a small grocery store, two police officers, Jeff Hawkins and Mike Barnes, pass by in their patrol car. These two men, infamous for their brutal methods and racist behavior, immediately notice John. In their eyes, his presence in this neighborhood and his calm attitude become suspicious. They exchange a knowing look before turning around and parking their vehicle not far from him. The two police officers get out of the car, their heavy gait betraying a desire to intimidate. Hawkins, the elder of the two, says in an acerbic tone, "Hey you look very nervous. Can we know what you're doing here?" John, surprising by his calm in the face of aggression, responds calmly, "I am walking, as every citizen has the right to do." But this response, far from appeasing them, fuels their distrust. Barnes, more impulsive, approaches abruptly. "That's it, yeah. That's good. We're looking for a thief who matches your description. You're going to have to follow us." The accusation falls without proof, based solely on their prejudices. Passers-by, attracted by the commotion, begin to stop, some discreetly taking out their phones to film the scene. John, always in control, refuses to let himself be carried away by the indignation that rumbles within him. He just raises his hands slightly and declares, "I think you are mistaken, officers. But I'm going to dig in to clarify things." This calm and respectful attitude further irritates Hawkins, who sees it as an attempt at provocation. Without further warning, he grabs John by the arm, squeezing with needlessly brutal force. However, just as they were about to handcuff him, a voice rose from the crowd. "Do you know who it is? You will regret this." The murmurs intensified, some passers-by recognizing John Carter thanks to information broadcast the day before by the local press. The police remain in the dark, refusing to admit that they could make a mistake. With cold firmness, John decides to reveal his identity. "I'm John Carter, the new police chief of this city, and I advise you to let go of my arm immediately." Despite his calm and rational attempts to explain that he is a superior officer and that they are making a serious mistake, the two police officers flatly refuse to listen to him. Their minds are already locked in their prejudices, and for them, John's quiet confidence only compounds his insolence. Completely ignoring his words, they take action, acting with disproportionate brutality. "Shut up," Hawkins orders, grabbing John by the arm. "We'll see if your story holds up once we interview you." Without struggling, John allows himself to be handcuffed, not out of resignation, but because he knows that any resistance, even legitimate, would only make the situation worse. However, the violence of their actions leaves no doubt. This is not a normal arrest. Barnes, for his part, looks around with a smirk, as if to make sure everyone is witnessing their triumph. It's not every day you find such an arrogant thief, he sneers, ignoring the growing murmurs in the crowd. As passers-by gather, some horrified by the scene, others too intimidated to intervene, the police lead John towards a lamp-post located in the center of the street. In a gesture as humiliating as it is useless, they violently tie him to this post, his handcuffed wrists gripping the cold metal. "There you go, stay there," Hawkins says triumphantly. "We'll let you marinate for a bit while we check your story." The act, brutal and symbolic, is a clear attempt to reduce John to a figure of public scorn. Around him, shocked faces multiply. An elderly woman whispers, "This is insane. We haven't seen something like this in decades." Some take out their phones to film the scene, their looks oscillating between fear and indignation. Among them, a young man takes the risk of approaching. "Hey, do you know what you're doing? This man did nothing." Barnes abruptly pushes him away with the back of his hand. "Move on, kid. You don't want to get in trouble." John, despite the physical pain and the stinging humiliation, remains calm. His gaze remains fixed straight ahead, his posture erect, almost regal, silently defying the police and refusing to give them the power to break him. His lips, tight, let not a word of anger escape, but his eyes tell all his indignation. It was then that a murmur ran through the crowd. "But that face, it's him, isn't it? The police chief." The rumor spreads quickly, and soon, several people start shouting, "Let him go. You are making a mistake. This man is John Carter." The officers exchange a look, hesitant, but Hawkins shakes his head. "Nonsense. This guy is just trying to confuse us." It was at this moment that a woman in the crowd, visibly outraged, decided to dial a number on her phone. She walks forward, holding her device at arm's length, the screen turned towards the police officers. "Look, it's him. John Carter, the new police chief of this city. You are humiliating your superior in front of everyone." Some passers-by, stunned by the public humiliation, took out their phones to film the scene. The images, taken from different angles, capture not only John Carter's brutal attachment to the pole, but also the tense faces of the police officers and the growing hostility of the crowd gathering around it. Murmurs are heard among the spectators, some whispering indignant remarks, others raising their arms to take videos. A quick call is made to the town hall, and soon the truth comes out. The mayor, alerted by one of his colleagues, receives the videos on his phone. He quickly realizes the urgency of the situation. In less than 5 minutes, a squad of officers, under direct orders from the mayor, rushed to the scene to avoid an escalation. Local officers, accustomed to tensions with Black communities, arrive with obvious caution, aware that the situation is now in the spotlight. Arriving at the scene, they are greeted by the sight of John Carter, still tied to the pole. The crowd gathered around him, some chanting anti-police slogans, others demanding his immediate release. The police officers from another district, now aware of the seriousness of the mistake, exchange nervous glances, a collective awareness of the mess they have caused. One of them, the one who seemed the most nervous, slowly approached Carter, his gaze falling on the videos currently playing. John Carter, despite the degrading position in which he was placed, lets nothing of his anger show. He remains Olympian calm, every gesture measured. The release of his wrists is accompanied by no apparent emotion on his part, as if this humiliation, although unjustified, was just another obstacle in the path of his ascension. When the handcuffs are removed, he stands with unwavering dignity. He stares at the 2 police officers, and the crowd, in silence, waits for his reaction. He remains motionless for a moment, in perfect control of himself. Then, in a loud voice, but piercingly cold, he addresses the 2 agents. "Gentlemen, we will have a very serious conversation in my office. Starting now." The silence is total. The air seems to freeze around him as the words ring out like a solemn warning. The 2 police officers, visibly embarrassed but unable to apologize or correct their mistake, look down. Their authority wavers for the first time. A murmur of relief runs through the crowd as muffled applause begins to break out. Faces, marked by anger, relax slightly as if a personal victory had just been won. The mayor, while approaching to calm the situation, does not dare to interrupt. The squad of officers accompanying them suddenly seems more respectful, recognition of the error evident in their attitude. A few seconds pass before one of them speaks, offering an awkward and quick retraction, acknowledging that it was all a misunderstanding. But the defeat is already complete. John Carter makes an elegant gesture, indicating that he is ready to leave, without making a scene. The municipal team, more annoyed by the public embarrassment than by the injustice itself, decides to accompany him to avoid any further confrontation. But the crowd remains there, some still filming, others sharing the video on social networks. The next morning, the atmosphere at the police station is tense. The two police officers, Hawkins and Barnes, arrive early, but the air in the air is very different from what they knew before. They exchange a few nervous words, their faces marked by the humiliation of the day before. The other officers' looks are heavy with judgment, and it's clear they already know why Hawkins and Barnes are summoned. When they arrive in John Carter's office, the atmosphere becomes frosty. John is already seated behind his desk, his gaze piercing, implacable. The door closes behind them with a sharp click. A heavy silence settles in, broken only by the sound of the chairs they pull out to sit in front of him. "Well," John begins, his voice calm and authoritative, but sharp as a blade, "yesterday wasn't just a mistake. It was a series of choices. Choices that you made knowingly, without any respect for the procedures or the integrity of your function. You publicly humiliated me, but more importantly, you disrespected the entire community we must serve." Hawkins, older and more experienced, tries to regain control of the situation. He opens his mouth, but John immediately interrupts him. "I'm not finished, Hawkins. And I don't want to hear any excuses right now. You acted according to your prejudices as representatives of a system that neglects justice in favor of arrogance and racism. And that is unacceptable." Barnes, younger, seems more destabilized. He avoids John's gaze and clenches his fists under the table, a palpable nervousness. But John, implacable, continues. "You ignored the code of ethics, you ignored my explanations, and worse, you created a public scene that could have destroyed my reputation and sowed even more distrust in this already divided city. What did you do this for? To prove your authority? Or to give you a reason to continue to believe that you are above the law?" The silence becomes almost suffocating. Hawkins and Barnes exchange an awkward look, but they know their position is untenable. John takes a moment to let his words sink into the air, before slowly getting up and approaching them, as if to mark the importance of this moment. "I'll give you a chance," he says in a measured but firm voice. "But you will have to take this chance. You will be suspended, without pay, for an indefinite period. You will go through mandatory training on civil rights, dealing with racial bias and police work ethics. I will also request that this action be documented in your records." The two police officers, now seated in a submissive position, remain silent. Hawkins tries to hold back his frustration, but the tremor in his hands betrays his agitation. John takes his seat again, crossing his arms, and looks them straight in the eye. "You will return to work under my leadership, and if you cannot demonstrate change, if you cannot learn to respect the principles of justice that we must all embody, then you will be relieved of your duties. You don't deserve to wear the uniform if you can't honor it." Barnes, almost whispering, finally dares to speak. We understand." John, without even showing a sign of clemency in his eyes, concludes. "You better do it. This is just the beginning. You didn't just lose face yesterday. You lost all respect. Now it's up to you to win it back." The silence that follows is heavy, but the two police officers know that it is only a matter of time before John's decision becomes a reality in their lives. They leave his office without another word, their heavy and uncertain walk testifying to the weight of the responsibility they now carry. This meeting will mark a decisive turning point for Hawkins and Barnes. John Carter gave them a brutal, but justified, ultimatum. If both officers are ready to change, this period of suspension will be their last chance for redemption. but deep down a doubt persists. Their professional and personal lives are now hanging by a thread, and they know they will face much harsher consequences if their behavior does not change. The weight of their past actions, their arrogance and prejudice, weighs on their consciences, and each second spent awaiting John's decision seems heavier than the last. In the days that follow, they begin to realize the extent of their mistakes. Hawkins, a man accustomed to extricating himself from situations with his charisma and years of experience, is suddenly confronted with a truth he had long ignored. The system he thought he was serving is the one he helped to fail. Barnes, for his part, younger and impulsive, finds it difficult to reconcile his violent actions with the reality of police ethics that he had always neglected. The criticism from their colleagues is harsh, but John makes no concessions. They must prove that they are capable of questioning themselves. John, for his part, remains uncompromising. Although he is aware that the test he is putting them through is not easy, he knows that this approach is crucial to restoring the integrity of the police and the trust of the community. He keeps in mind that the police officers who serve under his orders must be a model of justice, not an instrument of oppression. For him, it is not simply a question of punishing, but of rehabilitating. However, he is not fooled. He knows that some men will never change, no matter how many opportunities they are given. If Hawkins and Barnes fail this test, they will disappear from the system, and John will ensure that they can no longer harm anyone, neither in this city nor elsewhere. The rehabilitation process is long and painful. They begin their mandatory training, immersed in difficult discussions about systemic racism, conflict management, and police ethics. The sessions are intense, often uncomfortable, but they offer the two police officers a rare opportunity for introspection. Barnes, in particular, seems to be questioning himself more deeply. Workshops and discussions with civil rights experts force him to look at his own actions in a mirror he never wanted to face. Yet, deep down, a part of him still rebels, wondering if it's all worth it. Hawkins, older and more hardened, seems less affected by the sessions, but he cannot ignore the mounting pressure. The ordeal of public humiliation remains fresh in his mind, and he begins to realize that his past as an authoritarian and unscrupulous agent has left him without guidance. The dignity he once had, anchored in his status as a senior officer, is now chipped away. At each session, he diligently takes notes, but in his eyes, an inner battle is taking place. Can he really change? Can he let go of years of toxic behavior, or is this new version of himself just a facade to save his job? But as the days pass, the pressure of the situation becomes greater. A rumor begins to circulate in the police station. Certain internal agents are beginning to doubt the ability of Hawkins and Barnes to rehabilitate themselves. The question of their future within the service constantly arises. Some police officers avoid them, while others, younger, observe them with suspicion. They wonder if the John Carter ordeal is really an opportunity or a strategic move to oust them. Rumors quickly turn into judgment, and the entire police station seems to be waiting for John's verdict. The pressure is mounting. The day he will announce their future draws near, and neither Hawkins nor Barnes can hide from this fateful moment. John, with an icy calm, observes all this attentively. He knows this situation is crucial, not only for Hawkins and Barnes, but for the entire precinct. Their failure would not only mean the end of their careers, but could also jeopardize the fragile trust he is building with the local community. The entire system is about to face a litmus test, and John is determined to emerge victorious. The next few days will be decisive. Hawkins and Barnes will have to demonstrate, through concrete actions and not just words, that they are worthy of continuing their mission as agents of peace. But John is clear on one point: there is no room for half measures. If any of their actions still bear the slightest trace of prejudice or unjustified violence, they will disappear from the system, as he promised. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, Hawkins and Barnes failed to live up to John Carter's expectations. The rehabilitation process, although intensive, fails to erase the years of racist and brutal behavior rooted in them. Their attempts at change remain superficial, marked by repeated flashbacks, signs of resistance, and behaviors that betray their old habits. They participate in training sessions, but their actions outside of them do not reflect a real challenge to their prejudices. Their reports continue to show obvious biases, and isolated incidents demonstrate their inability to adopt a truly respectful and egalitarian approach towards citizens. As the weeks pass, the signs of their failure become more and more evident. Barnes, although he has shown some signs of questioning himself, often reverts to intimidation reflexes when confronted with tense situations. His colleagues frequently report him for inappropriate behavior, and he seems unable to confront his deep-seated prejudices. Hawkins, meanwhile, defends himself with arrogance, downplaying the impact of his past actions. He cannot shake off his authoritarianism and his contempt for procedures. His reports continue to contain subjective judgments, and several citizen testimonies reveal that his behavior has remained hostile and condescending. The day for John Carter to make his decision approaches, and he watches their progress with meticulous attention. In a final meeting with the two police officers, John is direct and unambiguous. "You had a chance," he said firmly. "A chance to prove that you could change, to show that you are capable of serving this community with respect and fairness. But your actions, your relationships, and your behaviors show no real willingness to confront your own biases. You have failed. You haven't learned." The two police officers remain silent, but their faces close under the weight of his words. John's gaze is merciless. "It is clear that you cannot continue to serve under my orders," he adds. "What you have done is irreparable. You have betrayed not only the trust of this community, but also that of your colleagues and yourself. You are relieved of your duties, effective immediately." The words echo through the room like a final verdict. Hawkins and Barnes, unable to protest or challenge the decision, slowly stand up, their faces full of shame. The failure is total. Their dreams of continuing to wear the police uniform crumble before them. John watches them leave, but his gaze is indifferent. He knows he made the right decision. Their failure is not just a personal defeat, but a message to the entire department. There is no place for those who choose to maintain injustice under the cover of authority. He is determined to restore order to the ranks, to establish a new culture of responsibility and respect within the police station. This decision will also mark a turning point for the police station. If Hawkins and Barnes are not ready to reform, other agents will be observed with the same rigor. John Carter will no longer leave any room for impunity, and those on his team must adhere to the values of justice, equality, and dignity. The message is clear: change is necessary, and it starts with it.